This is the True North Collective podcast, a gathering of unsugar-coated conversations on authenticity, created by the real-life documentation of everyday humans fearlessly finding their true north.
Welcome to Season 3 of the podcast.
Hey, we are super excited. This is going to be our last free workshop of 2020, and we are bringing Judy back to do it with us. This one is a great workshop to do around the holidays when things can seem hectic. Maybe you're not feeling as rooted or grounded in yourself. Jump on in, grab a friend, do it by yourself, although we highly encourage community. And we'd love to have you join us. So let's jump on in, introduce Judy, and get this workshop rolling. You will need a pen, a piece of paper, and our worksheet, which you can download in the show notes. All right, excited to get started with you guys.
Recording.
Okay, I feel like I can kick this one off a little bit. Go. Okay.
No, that was cool.
Cool.
Kool.
Got it. Okay. Cool. So this episode is really cool. They all are. This one is going to be another recorded workshop with the amazing Judy Dano. And so we're going to do this final workshop of the year. It's a workshop on presence, which I know is kind of like in the world of like personal development and mindfulness. Like I feel like we've all kind of heard that. And so we're taking a little bit more of like an authentic approach to presence. And so it's going to be a bit more of an experiential workshop more than anything else. And we really invite you today to let go of like what you think presence is or isn't or whatever. And we're kind of just going to play. So this episode is going to be about 30 minutes workshop where you can participate with us. And then a 30-minute-ish conversation on presence and just like what that means to the three of us and how we're playing with it and how it shows up, how it doesn't, all that stuff. So if you are planning on participating in the workshop, definitely go to the show notes. There will be a link to the actual worksheet that you can use as a part of this conversation, and just use the pause functioning as you need to give yourself more or less time to be able to reflect and be with what is. And we highly encourage you to, like, if you want to do this with other people and have a live conversation, that is honestly the best thing. The community help is the community support, community witnessing is so powerful. So we highly encourage that. Anything else that you want to share, Jenell?
For anyone who hasn't listened to any of our past workshops, Judy, do you want to just give them a little background on you and Thrive and where you come from?
Sure. Awesome. Yeah, first of all, thanks again for having me. These are always a blast. I thoroughly enjoy the conversations that the three of us, have during these workshops and our recordings here. So thank you. It's fun to be here. About me, love this part of it. I got into kind of the personal development scene. I feel like almost my whole life I've been super intrigued by people and all of that. But I dove in super deep starting in 2012 and have been doing this journey for quite a while now. And I own a business called Thrive. We're a human development company. We started out in more of the personal side of things, and now we've really shifted into the business side of things where we're trying to meet people where they're at. And most people many people are in business. That's where they work the majority of their time, or where they are the majority of their time. And so we thought, can we bring the personal side of things to to people at work? And so that's what we've been trying to do and what we're currently doing, and seeing really great results from it. And we work with individuals. We also work with, like I said, we go in and we work with teams. And we just really kind of take, Rachel, you kind of said, this holistic approach. We take this holistic approach to let's really develop people as a whole human, and it's surprisingly, things are shifting within organizations, and it's actually being really, really well received. And there's powerful results if we can actually take care of people. And so that's a little bit about us. Yeah, check us out on thrivehdc.com.
Yeah, and I'll just plug, we'll put some links in the show notes. And Judy is one of my life coaches. I highly recommend her. So I'll have a link to, like, her email will be in there. And then there's a bunch of programming that Thrive does too. I know we've plugged it before, but I can't speak highly enough about it. It is personally changed my life. So, all right. With that said, let's go. So how this will work is Judy and I are going to facilitate, and then Jenell is going to be participating. So you'll kind of get to feel it, but we all answer and participate because we're all learning. There's no real experts here. Cool. So to kick this off, if you have the worksheet in front of you, we're just going to ground in the first two questions, which are, what made you show up for this today, this workshop, this space? What do you hope to get from this time? And then the second question you'll see is, what are you feeling right now? And are you present? So I'm going to just give some time to answer those questions. All right, wherever your thoughts are, go ahead and wrap them up. And does anyone feel super inspired to share first?
I can go as the participant. What made me show up for the workshop? Definitely just, it's a busy space and time in life, and this is going to give me the opportunity to get grounded. And then how am I feeling right now? This is also probably why it's great that I showed up. Anxious, not present, future tripping, uncertain, and scared. Those are the words that came up for me this morning. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for being here, Jenell. I'll go. What came up for me on why I showed up for this workshop is I'm really feeling the that energy of giving. Like, I really want to, like, show up and give and share. And then with that, it's with a sharing with an intention of, like, collaborating and being a part of something that, like, builds something. So I was surprised that showed up for me today. And then I do feel really present. I haven't felt present this week all the time, but I feel really present right now. And what that feels like is, like, I can feel myself in my body. I can feel my feet, and I can feel my clothes on my skin, and I can hear the sounds around me. And I feel like I'm here with you doing this. And that is really cool, because it doesn't always stay that way, but I feel it right now. And I'm like, woo, that feels good. So yeah.
Cool. I love it. Love both of those answers because I'm kind of in between. So that's kind of cool. The reason why I showed up for this workshop was I love the topic of presence. I feel like it's not, I feel like it doesn't feel like an expansive topic. Yet I think it is so incredibly expansive and very much an important practice for well-being and success. And so I really love to come together and have those conversations and, you know, feel inspired and find insights and growth. And the way that I like to do that is through conversation and interacting with other people. So I'm super excited, and that's why I showed up. What am I feeling right now? I'm feeling, like I said, a little bit in between. I feel very much present in, like Rachel described, I can feel my body sitting in the chair. I feel very much present in my body. And yet at the same time, I do have somewhere to go after this, where it's a little bit of a trip. I'm going to see my mom, which is about an hour drive, and, you know, and we're in COVID, and, you know, like we get, so there's never, so nowadays presence is a little bit harder for me on the daily practice, because I feel like there's so much more to think about when you're doing anything. And so it's how am I staying safe and all of those things. So, but at the same time, like, so I think about it as I'm using this opportunity as a practice for presence, and just to remember to stay here.
I love that idea of using this to practice it instead of feeling like you have to just be there. Like, and I also love what you said, which kind of will start to go into the exploration. I'll let you take the baton. But I like how you spoke to the fact that presence can seem not very expansive, and yet when it's almost like so when I was in advertising, we used to always try to like distill the idea down to like the simplest nugget that you possibly could, because the simpler that it was, there's actually way more you could do with it. And the more like depth and palpability could come from that simplicity, because it was just, you just were coming at it in a million different ways, all reinforcing that one thing. And it kind of reminded me of that a little bit. Like, if you can sit with the simplicity that it is, there's actually so much to it. So I appreciated that.
I totally agree with that. I think that that description is very interesting, because to me, that makes so much sense. I think it's one of those things where, and we're going to get into that, but you know, it seems like so simple, and yet at the same time, why is it so hard to do?
Anyway. Okay, cool. Let's move into explore. I'm going to let you kind of set the space a little bit, Judy.
Sure. So for me, when I'm thinking about presence, and like we just were talking about, there's this simplistic kind of, I almost get the sense of this, yeah, I know I'm supposed to be present. Yeah, sure. And yet and then the other thing I think that happens is that, and I am a meditator, I do have a meditation practice. I think a lot of people think that presence is, I go sit in a corner and I meditate. And actually it's interesting, I'm doing a mindfulness workshop right now, and which has been really interesting, talking about all different aspects of mindfulness, not just the present component of mindfulness, which kind of seems like that doesn't make sense, but it does. And so it's like the purpose and all of that. But when I think about presence from that simplistic kind of nugget that you talked about, Rachel, for me, that is where the expansion comes in, because when I can be super present, when I can be in that practice and stay in the essence of kind of my being in every situation, it creates a full experience of life for me. And so that's really what I take away when I think about presence. You described it perfectly. Like when I can become more simple and more kind of grounded in who I am in the moment. And again, I'm not saying that this is an easy thing to do. I mean, obviously I shared that in the beginning, I shared that, you know, right now I'm not I wasn't feeling 100% present. And I think that might be something interesting to talk about too. What is 100% presence? Like, is that even possible? Is it attainable? You know, and do we want to use the word attainable when we're talking about presence? I don't know. So that's kind of the lens that I come from when I think about it.
Yeah, and what I heard there too, which kind of dovetails into the next two setup points, is like, I just wrote down presence isn't peace, which it is, but it's not, and I'm just speaking from my own experience right now. Presence for me isn't about reaching that, like trying to strive for peace. Presence is being able to like recognize that I am in anxiety and this is what it feels like and I'm here with it. And then peace almost gets derived from that because I'm just experiencing what is versus trying to make it be anything. Does that make sense?
For me, it makes complete sense. And because I used to struggle with anxiety and depression, like severe, like debilitating anxiety and depression. And the thought of staying with my anxiety was terrifying. Like, I cannot be present in it. And so the more I kind of pushed it away, the bigger it would come up, and then it would be, you know, it would kind of eke out in ways or unexpected times when it just, you know, wasn't appropriate, or, you know, like, or it was in these areas that I was just even more terrified. And so when I think about it from that perspective, like, that is literally how I got through my anxiety, was being able to lean into it. And like you said, it's not about this like calm that we're you know, doing off in the corner. It's how can I be present in every single emotion or thing that I'm experiencing in life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you're trying to get to the calm you're bypassing the actual experience of presence.
Yeah.
It's just kind of crazy.
This is the person in like the anxious state this morning, you saying that again, like all I wanted to do this morning is like, how can I get out of this? How can I solve my anxiety? And you being like, just sit in it. And like instantly I'm like, that actually feels better.
It does.
Just,
it's bizarre.
Like, okay, I don't need to solve anything. Like, just you're anxious right now. It's okay. Just be anxious right now. So thank you. It's already helping.
I think that's one of the messages from my life experience that I think has been really helpful for people, is that message of when you sit with it, it actually feels better. And it sounds crazy, but and like my anxiety was, you know, a lot of times so heightened that those points were very, very difficult for me to do that, because I literally thought like I was losing my mind, or you know, I was going to lose control, or whatever it was that I was, you know, irrationally thinking at the time. But I still did it, and that was how I got to the point where I'm at now, where anxiety is a very, very minute part of my life now.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's when you're trying to solve it, it creates the deeper spiral for sure. And it's also not, for me, it's external. When I'm trying to solve, a lot of times it's not, it's like, how do I get this person to tell me what I need them to tell me? And it is the control, versus when you just sit in it, you're like, well, then it's just mine and I'm just going to be like, it's a more internal process.
I love that.
I love hearing you talk about it too, Judy, because knowing you, it's like, obviously you're a human, so you're allowed to have all of the things, and you do own that anxiety, but I have never really experienced you being that, and it just means a lot to me, because there's things that people look at me and go, there's no way that you have that level of like that voice in your head that's telling you mean things, or that level of sadness in you, and it's like, but I do, and it just makes me feel more normal. So I love when you talk about it. So thank you. Okay. So to just land these three things to set up this space, I just want to ground that this conversation, to Judy's point, is recognizing that presence is simple and sometimes it isn't easy. And can we allow that for today, for this space, can we allow ourselves the invitation to recognize that it's okay for it to be simple and not easy? The other thing is, can we for today consider presence from a standpoint of, like, we will talk about the concept of it. We are talking about the concept of it, but the actual reality of presence, there's a difference between like understanding the intellectualized idea of presence versus actually being in the reality of it. And so those are kind of two different things. And today, right now, we're kind of talking about it. Some of us are kind of experiencing it, and we're going to work through actually what we say dropping into the body to experience what it might feel like, or how we might be able to start recognizing what it is to feel presence versus just know it as a concept. And then the third thing to consider is that presence, what if it is embracing all of what's here now? And we kind of alluded to that a little bit with acknowledging that Jenell sitting with her anxiety, that is actually present, being present to it. What is that? What does it feel like in your body? What do you hear when you're in that space? Like really gathering a depth of understanding of all that is here right now as it is, versus trying to be in that owned out place where it's like, I've cleared the slate and there's nothing here. Like, we're really talking about a presence that embraces right now, what is here, without trying to change it or fix it, or honestly, even the other side's overly celebrated. It's like there's this surrender, this embracing, this, I think equanimity is a word that I've heard a lot of that I try to play with, whereas like recognizing the judgment either way and instead just really be with all that is. Is there anything that you would add to that, Judy?
I think you actually said it really, really well. I think that, again, you know, this idea of presence being off in a corner is I think a kind of a common misconception of it. So I really appreciate that messaging of embrace everything that you're experiencing. And as terrifying as that can be, I think it actually empowers you so much more.
Yeah, and then we'll move on to like the
the
reflection. But we often talk. Actually, there will be a podcast that goes live. We recorded it; it hasn't gone live. It's going to go live, and we talk about seeing and being seen, and the power of witnessing, and what happens there when you're able to witness another person or feel witnessed. And the burden that it releases and the shame that it releases, just, and play with that. That's how we have talked about how it feels for us. And this almost feels a little bit similar of like witnessing the depth and the nuance to where you are allows you to truly see and almost not have to carry or hide anything. You get to be fully there. I don't know, it just came up, so I'm sharing that. All right. Do you want to kick off our first reflection question, Judy?
Sure. So our first reflection question is, why presence and who cares?
Who the fuck
I love
cares?
this. And the reason why this question I think is so important is because, you know, we can tell you that presence is helpful and that it worked, you know, it helped us work through things, but it's really important that you take a moment for yourself and say, why would I want to even think about this practice? And then, you know, and what are my reasons around it? So take a moment and answer that question for yourselves. Awesome. So, who wants to share?
I can go. It was weird because I know from creating this workshop what I think I'm supposed to say, but I'm going to say what actually came up. So it calms me down. It sets up this like default baseline for myself. So it's not that it just like keeps me in the practice of like presence begets presence almost. So it kind of sets up a default that calms me down. It also lets me see more clearly. So I feel like when I'm able to like invite presence, like things can come into focus more, and I'm not so like lost in like, where am I supposed to look? What's here? Blah, 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 blah. So it kind of like focuses my lens. And then I wrote down, it gives me something to do instead of worry. So it's like, it gives me something if I'm sitting with something that I don't know really what to do. It's like, it's a thing that I can do instead of worrying. So it's like an alternative thing that ultimately ends up allowing me to come back to myself if I have a sincerity with it. So that's what I wrote down.
I love that. Jenell, did you want to share?
Yeah, I can go next. I'm the worst podcast host. I just turned the heater on, so you're going to hear it in the background, but I'm freezing, so you're going to hear some of my voice. Okay, so when I first answered this question, I don't know, I saw it and I was like, who does care about presence? And I'm like, okay, just kidding, I do, but I feel like I have a little rebellion against it. But then I started writing and it actually came pretty easy. I said, because I want to actively live my life, not run away from it. I don't want to numb out or avoid. I do want to be seen, and that requires seeing myself. And a lot of times I see myself in actually being present in what I am experiencing. And if I can see myself, then that means I can also be open to allowing others to see me too.
I love that. I love that both of you kind of touched on that clarity piece of seeing. I did not go there at all. So I love that. It's cool. I'll share. So to me, presence gives me a better experience of life, a more full experience of life. It's like Jenell said, I don't run away from the things that, it's almost like I almost dive in more deeply to the things that I'm afraid of or that are not great or whatever. And it allows me that different experience. And to answer the who cares piece of it, I put I care, and then people around me care too, I think, because where I kind of went was it creates more connection for me. When I'm present, I have more connection to myself. And I think, Rachel, you shared a little bit of that too. But then it also feels like when I'm present, I can connect to people better, and I can connect to situations, and I can connect to experiences. And maybe there is some sense of clarity in there for me also, as I'm talking through it, I'm like, oh, maybe I am speaking kind of about the same thing. That I think is, the more that I practice it, the easier it gets throughout my day-to-day experiences. And then the other piece of it is I understand the physiological side of being present and kind of the shift in the neural pathways. And so I see it as a health benefit for myself. And so that's another reason why I like the practice of it.
I love that reminder of, it's just, even though we've been doing this podcast for a while and like I've been in this work for a while, I'm still really programmed to think that what brings me health is the food that I eat and if I work out. But there's so much, I know that there's so much more. And so it's like a good reminder of like just the expansion of my default narratives. So.
Awesome.
All right. So no matter what you wrote, there's no right or wrong answer. And so we just wanted to throw some other thoughts that we came up with prior to creating this workshop that felt important to ponder and try them on and see what you think about them. So presence being the ultimate conduit or vehicle for your resourcefulness, creativity, and possibility. This is something that I play with as a coach. And personally, I have found that when I can drop into the present moment, I have access to so much more because I'm not worrying about the future or the past, or I'm here with what is. I'm recognizing the resources that are, and I'm able to, like, I don't know, it feels like there's a clear space to be able to play and to access things. Like I'm kind of fully on, and the resources are available for me to do with what I want. I think this also can get, from a spiritual standpoint, can get into access to something that may be beyond. I know a lot of times, Big Magic, who wrote that book? I cannot think of her name right now.
I can't think
Eat,
of her
Pray,
name.
Love.
Yeah.
Gilbert. Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yeah.
I think she talks about that a little bit, where she becomes like the channel or the vessel or the vehicle. And I feel like it almost, for me, can be this space when you drop in of like, your system's fully online, it's ready, and you can receive. And so take that or leave that if spirituality is in your toolkit. But I found that.
Rachel, I definitely agree with that. And whether or not you call it spirituality or just intuition, I think that being in the present moment allows you that ability to tap into, even if you're not comfortable with the spirituality side of things, but that intuition, kind of that innate knowing that I believe that we all have, that, you know, kind of GPS system that guides us. I think that is absolutely one of the reasons why I practice presence. And that's one of the reasons why I do my meditation, for sure. Because of that reason, is that connection to those insights and awarenesses and intuition and spiritual connection that comes in.
Yeah, what just came through to me as you were talking was even just from an energetic standpoint, it's like everything is energy. And if I'm not actually plugged into the present moment, there's a wall, there's a block. There's actually like a block to life that is energy that is flowing. And so even just from that standpoint, the energy that is around us, when we allow ourselves to be fully present, we have access to all that energy that exists, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally agree with that.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to the bridge?
Sure. So, excuse me. This is one of the pieces that I love because when I work with clients, so many times I've heard people say, well, you know, I did all of the right things and I got to where I wanted to go and I was successful. And you know what, the way I kind of like describe it is they forgot to bring themselves with them. So they were like doing all of these things and yet they get there and they still don't really feel in their bodies, or they feel like they're kind of outside of themselves. And so when I think about presence as being the bridge and it allows you to kind of stay in the moment. It's not that you let go of your vision, right? We all have a vision for where we want to go and what we want to do and where we want to be. But when I'm outsourcing my awareness to that vision, I'm no longer in the present moment. And so presence allows us to bridge that gap. It's when I can stay in the moment of where I am. And I know when I talk about this, some people get nervous about being complacent. And like, well, I can't do that because then I'm not going to get to where I want to be. I have to be thinking out here and, you know, in front of me. And so, you know, what presence actually does is it allows you to experience what you want to experience in the present moment. And then that keeps you within yourself so that as you're moving forwards towards your vision, you're experiencing and bringing yourself with you.
What I also just heard while you were talking was it invites the release of the pressure of time constraint.
Absolutely.
So it's like, instead of worrying that I'm here and I'm not there where I'm supposed to be, or we're not there yet, or whatever, it like invites the release of that to just allow what is, knowing that you have dreams and desires that exist here right now. And so from that, how do I stay with myself in that dream right now? So anyways, that just came up for me. I was like,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I like that. I like that you said that, because what the way that I experience it, and I'm hoping that I can articulate this, but some people might be like, no, that you're not, like, I don't get it. But the way that I experience is when I'm in the present moment, even though I have this vision of what I have in the supposed future, right? If we believe in time constraints, then what happens is it almost as if that vision comes towards me. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so you get that?
I mean,
Rachel gets it.
do.
I don't know if
Janelle gets it.
I do.
Same.
Because, okay. Angry therapist. It's like attracting versus chasing. Like when you're chasing it in the future versus like when you're in the moment, you're attracting it.
Well, it's funny that you say the chasing, because it almost makes it feel like, when you said that, I almost like get this sense of that I'm pushing it away when I'm chasing it.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. Well, because there's such and it's funny when you think about manifestation, which we're not talking about now, but I'm going to talk about it,
right.
Is like, there's a trust in being able to just be here with all of it that is, and to be, again, without the time constraints. It's like, if you're here and this dream is alive and well within you, but time isn't an issue, what step is appropriate for you to be on for that dream to be coming to life right now? It's like, that is manifestation. So it is kind of interesting.
It is. Well, it reminds me a little bit of, we can kind of take it a little mainstream, right? I mean, manifestation is mainstream now, more and more mainstream, but at least in my world, I don't know about everywhere, but we can even take it a little bit more mainstream and say, like, you put the suit on or the dress on for what you want it to be, right? And so it's kind of like, it could be like that too. It's like, what is who do I be right now in the present moment? Well, if I want to be this thing that I see outside of myself, be it now, and so that's another way to think about it coming to you versus chasing after it. Because if I'm chasing after it, that means that I'm not it. And so and it's outside of me.
Well, and my next point, I think, dovetails really well into the connection of self piece, which is in that statement. Yes. And if I am trying to force myself into something that doesn't actually fit me, that is not what we are talking about.
Totally.
Here. It's like,
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, yes, what is the edge, the being edge that you can find to step into right now that is actually present and connected to yourself right now. And so presence really there is the connection to self and the holding of the dreams that are in your current reality, and recognizing when it starts to go into like forced or fantasy land. Because when it's there, you're not actually present anymore. And I play with this a ton, because fantasy is a huge coping mechanism of mine that has allowed me to survive a lot of things. And it became I was so good at it. I am so good at it that I have deployed it in times when I wasn't surviving. And so presence has really been a play in playing on that edge of how do I own my edge without into fantasy land and losing my connection to reality and my ability to actually make things happen in the resourcefulness that is right now.
I think you described that really well, Rachel, in terms of when I think about like being in the fantasy land, to me, that still is outside of yourself. And what I heard you say was, when I play in that space, I know that I'm actually not in the creation space. I'm in the dreaming space. And those are two very different spaces.
Yeah. And again, not that dreaming is inappropriate, but
No.
when I'm numb, when it's a numbing or when I'm
Right.
using it to distract, then, that's not serving me as
Right.
well as it could if I'm trying, depending on what I'm trying to do. Cool. So we're going to drop it in now and invite you to practice actually having an experience of presence or tapping into what your unique experience of presence is. Discernment is a word that I never really played with much until I met the Thrive team, and I love it. Discernment is being able to take these concepts, take these universal truths, takes these mass-produced ideas and try it on for yourself and be like, what of this does actually feel true to me? The book that you read versus the firsthand experience. So we're going to do the firsthand experience right now and see what comes up. And so I'm going to invite everybody to answer the first 3 questions under discernment of your unique experience. So when in the last week did you realize that you were not present, and how did you know? When did you feel you were present? How did you know? And then from that, or in addition, what is your experience of being present? What are your markers? What are the indicators of your own presence? And then leave the last question. We'll do that later. You all ready?
I am.
Need a little more time. You good? Okay. And I'm going to say, instead of like, having to go through all the details, just big picture, what did you take away from that experience? What was that like?
So, for me, I think that it was kind of really cool to think about the times when I wasn't present, and I was immediately able to say my experience of it, because I know that many times, or what my biggest indicator would be anxiety for me. Like if I'm feeling anxious about something or stressed about something, I know that I'm not present. And so that's probably my biggest key indicator. I know that a lot of times there are a lot of people who don't experience anxiety, so they're completely different than that. But for me, that was kind of I was surprised at how quick that came out for me, even though it's like cognitively I know that. And then the other thing that I'd like to say is, when I experience presence, it feels like flow for me. And the times that I experience it, probably the most clear, or the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the time that I understand it or know it the most is when I'm in client work, because there's a visceral experience of presence that I have, and I don't necessarily take that with me in my day-to-day, like outside of my client work. But when I am in client work, I'm kind of locked and loaded and engaged and in flow and connected and all of that. And so that to me is one of the reasons why I absolutely love what I do, is because I get to experience that experience in connection with others. So those were some fun awarenesses that came out for me, because I haven't really sat down and done these particular questions before.
Yeah, I feel like a lot is flowing on this, so this is very relevant for me. The theme that I had in all the questions was really trust and control. Like generally when I'm present, I have a sense of trust that things will work out, that I'm where I'm supposed to be, like, and can more so focus on me and how I want to show up. And when I'm not present, I feel like a lot of times it is tied to like me wanting to control things that are outside of myself. So controlling the outcome of, applying for a job, controlling the outcome of what I want a relationship to look like and how that other person shows up in a relationship. And so as I was going through these, it kind of comes back to something I started to say at the beginning of the podcast from probably our intention setting workshop. It was like celebrate and detach. And that, I think for me, is presence. It's like being able to celebrate the moment that I'm in and then detach from whatever else is coming my way. Like that is presence for me. And the celebration doesn't have to be like, hey, I'm sad and this is the best experience of being sad ever, but also just like, okay, maybe celebration isn't always the right word, but like acknowledgement and detach, and sometimes celebrate and detach.
I love that. I really honed in on the markers piece. Like, that was pretty cool. I'm definitely still learning. I have realized this year that I have spent a majority of my life in survival mode, which it has been fluctuating between a state of fighting, flighting, or freezing. Like, I didn't know there was another state that you could be in. And so as I've started to learn to cultivate, I call it safety, cultivate me being okay to be me in the moment, I've noticed that my body markers, so my body has been like a really key component in that. I basically really couldn't feel a lot from like the heart down. And so as I've started to play with this, I feel like the bottom, that's more than half of my body is coming back online. And so like wiggling my toes is something that I really will do to check in, like, oh, have I even like been connected to my bottom half in a while? And so a lot of my markers were around my body. So my speech actually changes. I can feel body sensations. Like when I am not present, I tend to have tightness, constriction, burning sensation in my eyes, and pain in the back of my head. So I've just been paying attention to that, which, and what other signals exist. But it usually shows up as self-doubt. So self-doubt was the thing when I find myself in self-doubt. That's a very clear indicator that I'm not present, but the body signals have been a really, really other way for me to tell like what's here. And so I kind of can't bypass if I know self-doubt and my body, those body triggers or those body signals. If I now know that that means I'm not present or I'm in a survival state, it's easier for me to like do the things that I need to take care of myself. Whereas before I kind of just like ignored it and was just like, I got to keep going, too bad. Now I know you are in a state of survival, even if it doesn't feel like it, because it's not maybe as extreme, because I still have extremes in the survival feelings, even though it might be a nuanced survival state, you are there. So what can you do now before it becomes, it's screaming at you? So that kind of came up for me in this. Cool. So whatever your experience of this was, I would say this is the practice. It's like reflecting is such a cool thing because we have all these data points that we experience every single second. And so the ability to reflect on even the last hour can be a practice of discerning what your unique experience in being in presence is for you. And because the practice of presence is recognizing that it's out of presence, in presence, there's a whole gamut to pay attention to. And so we highly encourage you, if called, and even if not, maybe challenge yourself to reflect on your own unique experience of presence and just play with it and see what comes up for you. And so with that, I will invite the last question of this series, which is, what could you do to be more present right now in this space? If you were going to invite more presence in right now, what would that look like? So maybe just reflect on that a little bit. All right, that one can be a quick one because it doesn't have to be super crazy. And I just love to hear one thing that each of you put because I want to steal them.
I just put breathe and center to my breath. That is a quick, just a really quick tool to be able to come back to present for me.
I had that, but also a different one. I said trust. Like, I think when I'm in the moments where I'm spiraling out of control, just like asking myself, do you trust that? Do you trust yourself, and do you trust that this will work out? And if I can answer yes, like that brings me back to the present moment.
Yeah. I said breathe, put my hand on my heart, and wiggle my toes. That's like
I love that. Wiggle your toes. That's awesome. I am going to steal that one, Rachel.
Yeah.
That's good.
My therapist is always like, have you wiggled your toes yet in this session? And I'm like, no, I have not. I am doing it now.
That's great.
Yeah. Judy, do you want to speak to the practice piece?
Sure, absolutely. I actually come from a sports coaching background also. So coaching is kind of like in my life. And so I really like to think of things as a practice, and presence is no different for me in that. the bullet points say, you know, it's not a sustained place. You have to keep centering back to it. You know, this is, again, Rachel and I kind of talked about it, that it does, you do get better at it. I believe that I am better at presence now than I ever have been. And at the same time, I still have more to go. I don't think that I think that there are some people who are way better at presence than I am. But I don't believe that there is anybody that is perfectly 100% present all the time. And so I don't think that that's necessarily the goal. But I do think that, because I'm not necessarily a goal-oriented person, but I do it because of if the longer I practice it, the more I practice it, the more sustainable it becomes for me. It's not a 10-minute sit and done. It's just, again, you have to decide and keep choosing to do it in every single moment. You have to make that decision, just like wiggle your toes, just like go into trust. Those are choices and decisions that are made in each moment. And then it can be a difficult place, and that's okay. It can be super, super difficult. I kind of like to think of it as like muddled. You know, I have everything else kind of maybe coming down on me, or feeling just very much like takes priority and all of that. And sometimes it can be really hard to remember, even to, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do that practice of presence, and that's actually going to make this better. It can be really difficult to shift out of that other experience that you're having. And so intentional growth requires deliberate practice is one thing that we say at Thrive. And so if you can be intentional about it and deliberately practice it, it will get better and more expansive for you.
Yeah, what came up for me was like writing a book or running a marathon isn't just about that finish line. When you cross the finish line, it's like all the things leading up to it. And so I kind of think about that as, right now, I'm realizing that the practice of presence, it is a practice. And so therefore, even in those moments where you're feeling out of presence, that is part of it too. It's like acknowledging that it is the ability to recognize and then to sit with. And so yeah, that felt important for me to
I think
vocalize.
that, when you talk about the finish line, it's also about not, when you finish the race, you don't just stop. There's another race that you're going to run.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And so it's all of that beforehand, it's during, and then it's, afterwards, it's not like, oh, I'm done now.
Yeah. It's a part. Yeah. It's a part of the process of presencing. Mm-hmm. Includes these other elements that seem out of presence because we can't be present 100% of the time. And so part of the practice of presencing is acknowledging the cycle that mm-hmm. we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes being present is being in the cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. So let's make it yours. So we're going to land this thing. On the last page, what do you want to remember from this workshop today, or this time today? And then I am, and say what truly is here right now. And then how you'll live it. How will you cultivate presence in your life moving forward? I'll just give it a few minutes. All right, it looks like you guys are ready. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, we're fast.
This one
I don't feel called. Yeah, I agree. I can go ahead and share. What just came through to me is like, I am okay. And like, just across the board, like, what do I want to remember from today? I am. How will I cultivate presence? I am okay. Just rang true. And then the other thing is I want to remember the cycle of presence that we just talked about. That was like a cool reminder for me when I start to go into perfectionism. So
Mine was similar. I wrote, I am right where I need to be, and I'm still anxious. Because that's true. And then just pausing, breathing, coming back to trust, and letting go of control is what I really want to remember from today.
Love that. I want to remember wiggle the toes. I just think that that is such a great kind of bringing you out of, how often do we think about our toes, right? Breath is the thing that we think about, but now I'm going to be thinking about my toes. So I appreciate that. And I went with I am present. And that was the thing that came up. And I definitely feel more present now than I did in the beginning. So that's awesome. And then the way I want to cultivate it isn't to increase my awareness. So become more aware of when I'm not present. And that will help me then to continue to recenter by wiggling my toes and breathing.
it's the best. It makes it not so serious too. sometimes I take things really seriously. So. Good reminder.
I love it.
Yeah. So thank you everyone who is here and is playing with this and playing with us. And please reach out if you have any questions or thoughts. I know Judy is absolutely available. I know Jenell would be too. We love talking about this stuff, and it isn't like okay, we're done. It's an ongoing playground. And so, man, even if somebody wants to come on the podcast and talk more with us about presence, we would be so game. So just email us. Jenell's happy.
Hello at thetruenorthcollective.org.
Yeah. But so that concludes our workshop. Definitely more of the experiential one. And hopefully that kind of gives you a sense of how you can even maybe start playing with other things in your life from an experiential standpoint versus just the conceptual, which I think we don't often do. So thank you for everyone on that. And I'd love to transition into just a broader conversation on presence with the three of us. I know we typically start with the conversation, but it was kind of fun. Like I think a lot more came up during the workshop because we didn't do that, which was kind of fun. It felt more of like a conversational workshop. But what's here for you guys now around presence that we've kind of sat with that?
How much? I was gonna say, how like this year, definitely the cycle, the waves and the flows, because I'm thinking about like where I'm at right now, where I was at even at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and how much like some moments in the middle of the year I've been so present and like rooted in me and what I'm looking for and what I want in life, and not necessarily naively thinking like this is it, but being at that high of like the growth and being like, I have done it, I am confident, I am here. And then in like the latter half of the year starting to go like back to probably a similar place that I was earlier, and still acknowledging that there's been like growth between the two lulls. So that's definitely coming up for me, just that it is an ongoing practice, and when I'm put into new experiences, new playgrounds, different setups, like it's like learning a new layer of it, maybe not relearning, but like learning another aspect of it, or learning to be present in this experience.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think what's come up for me loud and clear is that embracing of the tough times. I think what did they used to say at Thrive? It was like embrace the suck or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't negate the suck.
Yeah, yeah. That's like been really, and just how often when the sucky stuff shows up, I've tried to make it not be that, instead of like really having sincerity to trying to not even try, like sitting in it and then recognizing, oh, I'm still running or I'm still trying to distract. But that has been so much of this year, and presence is, it's not about It's not another tool to devoid. It's not another tool to disconnect. It's a tool to really allow me to safely sit with what is, or to know, hey, I actually need more support in order to safely sit with this. And so, yeah, it is kind of weird that it's actually been more about like all the emotions that seem really uncomfortable than it has been about peace. But for some reason, then I've been able to experience a more depth of peace because I can experience those things without having to put so much action around them, if that makes any sense at all. It's kind of weird.
What's coming up for me is this idea of flow. I was at a conference recently called Transtech, and there's an author there that was talking about flow, and that's his big thing is flow, and how do we get everybody into flow at work more, you know, and so I see presence, like I said earlier, you know, if I'm so intrigued by the sustainability piece of it. And so I know, like I said, in myself, I have definitely experienced it and experience it more regularly than I ever have before. But I love what you said, Rachel, about, you know, when we think of flow, we're thinking about, I think about it, maybe not everybody does, but I think about it from that place of more peace and contentment. And what we've talked about today, I think, is so much more important because it's the experience of life. And so, yes, trying to be in flow is great, and it's a great experience, and it's amazing, and we are human. And so, you know, this conference that I went to was a lot about tech and how it brings out these kind of flow experiences. But I want to be in this experience, and so that's what's coming up for me in the present, in the terms of present is, you know, it allows me, again, this experience of life to be so full and robust.
I love the word sustainability. And I was like sitting with that and being like, what am I sustaining when I practice presence? And what came up was life. I mean, my own aliveness, my own experience of life, my own real experience of life versus chasing some good feelings. And how much effort that actually is to be constantly trying to be in a state of like happy, content. Like it is just exhausting. And I feel like I've been trying to get there for others, trying to get there for myself, and to really, really be inviting a question of what's sustainable here that I've tried for 37 years. At this point in my life, it is no longer sustainable. And so some people might be able to make it longer than that, or less than that. At this point, I've hit a crossroads where like that way is not sustainable. And so, but what has actually expanded is my ability to be with what is, to sustain the aliveness. So I love that. Thank you.
Well, and I think I struggle with that too, like the idea of chasing happiness, because even in like some of the people that I really admire and I like follow their work, they're still talking about like finding happiness and, you know, chasing joy. And it's like, okay, yeah, like I want those things in my life, but I don't know. I still struggle with that. I'm like, but I'm trying to sit in my anxiety. I'm trying to sit in my sadness. And yes, when I sit in those things, it normally frees up space that I can then later find joy and happiness, but not always. So I don't know, that just came up for me because I still like, I find myself in my head and like anxious points. It's like, just, you know, be happy, be the person that you want to be, which is this happy, fun person. But I almost feel like I'm like doing a disservice to myself too. Like it is, I'm still not like addressing the less pretty emotions and experiences in life. And I don't know if either of you, I don't know if there's an end point, but I'm like, how have you solved that? What are your 5 steps to solve my distress in life?
I think you hit the nail on the head though, Jenell. You know, these messages of finding happiness in quotes, right? And then, you know, or being joyful. The way that the easiest way for me to describe things to people is the essence of it. What do I experience versus the 5 steps, right? And I know you're kind of joking when you're talking about the 5 steps, but there's a lot out there that are like, here are the 5 steps. And so for me, it's a lot easier because what works for me is not going to be the same for you because you're a completely different human with completely different experiences and a completely different filter than I have. And so the essence of all of this for me is honestly, and this sounds so cliche, but getting so comfortable with who you are that the anxiety is no longer there and it allows you to be in the present moment. And I would say those were the key things that got me to where I am today in terms of my experience of life. And most people know me as a very optimistic person, but it is genuine, and it's not that I never go into the embracing the suck, and have those moments of, you know, this is not, I don't feel great about these things, but I have learned that when I do it from a superficial space of trying to make it better or make my experience better, that's not my authentic self. And so it doesn't feel good. And it feels like it creates a ripple effect throughout my life that continues that pattern of kind of being outside of myself. And so I don't know if I'm actually answering your question, but for me, that is the thing I think that has been most significant was how do I continue that practice of really embracing and loving all of me? And that is another key to where I am today.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I was just going to give an example because you said that and I'm like, yeah, I've actually experienced something similar to that. I've been applying for a ton of jobs and getting a ton of redirection letters or emails, which really means I didn't get the job. And I wrote a cover letter and I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to write this cover letter because I think cover letters are boring. Like in the exact way that I would want to write a cover letter and just do it and put it out there. And I still, like, I don't have an outcome from that yet, but there is like a piece and just like an acceptance and like, I did this as authentically and the way that I wanted to do it, despite what I think I was supposed to do or the recommendations of writing a cover letter. And this is probably terrible job advice for anyone who's looking for a job, but I'm like, whatever, like, I feel pretty good about it. I love the cover letter. And if they don't like it, don't hire me, like, fine. But like, I felt good walking away from that experience. And I actually found joy in it versus I've been writing a lot of other cover letters that are very standard and just like, here's the format. Here's how I'm supposed to write it. I found your job on LinkedIn. I am very excited and qualified to work for your company, you know, and like doing it differently and feeling good about it. Like that was like, you said that and I was like, oh, like I just experienced that in a different way. And I still know the outcome, which is kind of fun because I'm just proud of how I did it. And
yeah, because you did it for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's that's the difference. And that to me is the exact, like what we've been talking about with presence. You stayed with you and we're shining that out into the world, and whatever happens with it, you did it for you, not for them. And I think that's another really cool way to look at presence is, you know, how do I do the things that really enliven me in this present moment. And yeah, that's a great example. I love that. And so relevant for so many people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a flow state. Like I was writing and I was like, fun, me. Like, and I got done and I was like, that didn't suck. Like normally when I write a cover letter, it's exhausting. It takes a lot of energy out of me. And that one was just like, I'm speaking from my heart and it is what it is.
I would love, I mean, I would totally invite you to continue to do that. And I mean, that is what I know from my experiences and what my clients' experiences is the more you can do that, you're going to connect with the people that you want to be with. And I think that is absolutely, when we talk about chasing joy and happiness, like that's why you do it right there, what you just described. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm glad that, I'm like, I just did it. And thank you, because I'm feeling good about myself because I was definitely walking into this being like, but trying to like channel that experience into other aspects of my life too. And like, how can I continue to do that? Because that is like the money, that is the joy, and like and not taking life too seriously and just being in the experience that you want to be in and not feeling forced either.
Cool that we were able to capture this before you had an outcome, because
I know
I just want to like pause for you and give you the space to feel what you're feeling and to know that no matter what happens as a result of it, this feeling is still true and more important. And even if the outcome, I mean, you started to say it, even if the outcome doesn't work quote unquote in your favor because you got the job, like we don't actually know if that's in your favor or not. And if you were your authentic self and you didn't get the job, again, maybe that's in your favor because it wasn't going to be a fit. And so I love that. I was also going to say, when you spoke to embracing who you are, what came up for me right after was I've been in personal development worlds where choice becomes like the next, like that word just showed up for me right after you said that. And in choosing can almost be a chase is what came up for me, because if I'm embracing the parts of me that I want to see and not all of the parts of me, I am still choosing to chase something outside of myself. And so it is nuanced, but I always struggled with that idea of choice because, well, one, to your point, Jenell, like sometimes I want to choose good feelings, but that's not actually the choice that's going to best serve me right now. And so thinking about choice from a standpoint of where I actually am and what would best serve me now, knowing that I have these desires and I also am here. It's like taking in a fuller picture versus just trying to force yourself to be in a space. Like you can try any of the stuff on, you can, like I can put on joy and I can feel it in my body, but if there's something unresolved there, like at some point a bridge has to gap those two. And so eventually it's going to catch up with itself. And so can I hold all of it, which is what you're saying, Judy, like embracing all of who I am right now and taking all of that into consideration. What's the choice that best serves me right now? Those concepts have all kind of floated around for me before. And I've been kind of pissed off at them actually. Like, don't tell me I have a choice when I know I have a choice. I actually don't feel like, and don't now I feel ashamed that I can't muster up the choice that I want to have that I can't seem to have. And you're telling me to just have it. And then it's on me because I can't just fucking step into it. And, but really, if I can acknowledge what I want and where I am, there's like an honoring there that allows me to settle into the environment of choosing those or all of it into consideration.
I think the one thing that has come up for me, and I don't know why specifically it's coming up as you're talking about that, but there are a lot of people that I have worked with that have believe that personal development and growth is about fixing you, fixing yourself. I think that there's a lot of messaging around that, and the way that I see personal development and growth is that it is actually about embracing you, not fixing you. And so it's really about leaning into every aspect of who you are. And I know I kind of verbalized this earlier, but to me, I think it's so cool to be able to shift that perspective for people, because I see a lot of people that come into the personal growth or personal development space that are coming from what they feel is deficit space, that they are doing this because they want to be a different person. And when they get into this space, it can be hard for them to start embracing who they are, because they've had this story for so long that they need to fix themselves. And so that is one of my biggest, kind of frustrations and joys at the same time, because when I get somebody that I can shift them into really seeing and owning kind of this fullness of imperfection that we all are, it creates such a different life experience for them. And again, Rachel, to your point, it's not that we don't have things that we're learning about, and things that we're trying to do differently because maybe they haven't created the results that we've wanted, and things like that. And it's not to negate that, but if we start there and that's the only thing we focus on, then we're continually in that deficit space. So getting people to understand and embrace all of them, for me, is really important in the world.
I love that too. I've been following this woman who started the Narcissist Recovery Center, I think it's called. I'll link it in the show notes, because I'm working on my own codependency, and there's some, she invites the idea that narcissism and codependency actually go pretty hand in hand. And that was a really tough pill for me to swallow because I was like, I am not a fucking narcissist. And when I sat with some of the overt and covert narcissism, I kind of removed I invited myself to, like, okay, can I ask myself where these qualities may show up? What parts of me do kind of lean those ways? Let me just get curious. There was an embracing. There was because on the surface I could be like, oh, well, then there must be something fucked up about me if I'm a narcissist, or if I have narcissistic tendencies in some capacities. There's something broken in me that does need to be fixed. And she speaks to the disservice of just saying nobody's broken. And what I think we've bridged here for me, so just hang with me as I bring my thoughts together, is personal development, which I love the idea that is actually embracing the idea that we are whole, and that embracing all of the wholeness of who we are, that actually allows you to see the parts of you that aren't functioning as efficiently as they could. And so it's not about finding the deficit to fix it. It's about embracing all of it so that you can see it, so that you can ask for the help, and then go because the narcissism and the codependency are survival tactics. And when I can see them for what they are and see them as a part of my wholeness, I can do something with it without being and so she speaks to, there is something that is broken, there is something that needs to be fixed. And your system isn't working as efficiently as it could, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to be able to work on that and heal that. And personal development that I'm hearing you say is, can I embrace that process, not from a place of deficit and I'm a piece of shit, but from a place of, okay, this is a part of who I am based on the experience that I have for whatever reason. Maybe it matters why, maybe it doesn't. But can I embrace that so that I can sincerely show up to find more efficiencies, or love that, or understand it more without getting the added, and I suck, and I'm still a piece, and this is just proof that I am fucked up, and that's my story. So I'll just
and I see it when I hear you describing it that way. I see a lot of that as more of a behavior, right? And a behavior is only one small thing it's a thing that we do. And so behavior isn't necessarily our being, right? It's more of our doing. And so when I talk about it from that term, from that sense of, it's a habit that we've formed, that's a behavior. A behavior can be changed, right?
Yeah,
but the wholeness and the fullness of who we are is not that behavior.
Yeah, totally.
So love that.
I've been sitting with her comment of like, she got really upset about the fact that in the healing world, people will be like, nobody's broken. And she's like, no, mental illness is a real thing. And there is broken things happening. We need to acknowledge that. And so I was like sitting with, because I'm like, I think it's both is like where I'm landing. And I think that's where I was like, it's not that that's wrong. I mean, she is kind of right. Like there are aspects of my processing that like don't work for me. Like, and I do believe that I'm whole and complete. And there's like a capacity component there of, I don't know, there's like a possibility piece to it that there's an openness. So I guess I'm still playing with it, but I do think they both coexist.
I agree. I love that. I think it's a great conversation.
Yeah. I have a question. We spoke about how presence allows you to be connected to self so you can be connected to others. But I guess what came up for me pretty quickly after we ended this was a lot of this was in connecting to self and your own access point to the world and your aliveness. How does presence show up to be able to, when you're in connection with another person? How does that look for y'all?
Like a really big question for me right now.
I know.
And I'm going to answer this in like a way that, I don't know, hopefully I'm not like oversharing or sharing stories that aren't mine, but I find one, if I'm not connected to myself or present with myself, like I don't show up that well and the connection isn't fueled. And I think we just talked about that on a podcast episode that'll come out at some point around this one, of if I'm not with me, which I think being present is being with yourself too, I will not show up in a way that will allow other people to connect with me in the way that I want to. And I think I can be with me and present and also be around other people that aren't with themselves and present. And then there's like a disconnect there. So I've been playing with how do I like not take that personally and like not make it about me, because I think a lot of times I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's something not there. And I can check in with me first and say, am I not present with myself? Which is possible. Or sometimes it's like, no, I actually think I am. And this person might not be present with themselves. And like, how can I just let that be theirs and know that I can show up to the best of my ability? And if like, there's still that disconnect, I get to choose what to do with it. And it might just be taking a break. It might be choosing to maybe not invest as much time in that relationship. I don't know if you guys could hear that. My phone is talking to me. Investing as much time in that relationship. Maybe it is, there's many different outcomes, but like reminding myself that I am in choice and like, can I let that person process what they need to process and trust that they'll come back and we'll be connected when we're both ready to be connected.
What's coming up for me in that is, which is not answering the question, but what just came up for me was that connection to others doesn't have to look one way. And so being present with another person, wherever they are, is, I don't know. I guess I don't know how I haven't totally tied it back to the presence piece, but what came out for me really loud was that being present to the situation as it is, and like remembering, maybe this is it. Presence doesn't necessarily mean that you're in physical presence with somebody. Like it doesn't have to be that you are holding hands and hugging and like the the connection piece can still be there, and like the presence can still be there, even if it doesn't, like, I guess it goes back to my first thought, which is present isn't peace. Presence isn't, rainbows shooting out of your ass at the same time.
What I'm reminded of is that you are, when I can be present and accept and allow myself in the moments of the experiences that I'm having, it almost puts me into an observer perspective where I can then see the other person in their discomfort and either choose to connect or not connect to it, and then but still feel a connection because I'm experiencing it. It's almost like what you talked about earlier from the clarity perspective. My clarity is so different, and so I'm actually seeing the interaction in from a very different lens or perspective than if I'm not present with myself. And Jenell, I think that's what you were kind of saying, like when you're present with yourself, you have that ability then to connect with the other person. There's another component to me, which is that allowing of that other person's discomfort for them, but not taking it on. And so when I'm present and connected to myself, I don't take on the other person's discomfort necessarily, but I can connect in a different way. Maybe I connect heart space to heart space, or I connect to the part of that person that I know is comfortable and powerful, and so I can connect in a different way is what comes up for me.
Yeah, it reminds me of there's a concept of meta presence that I learned in one of my trainings, and as a coach, it's something that we cultivate, where how can I be aware of me and what's happening here while I'm also holding a container for what's happening for this other person. And so that meta presence allows me to be connected with the experience of the other person without making it me, allowing myself to honor their experience, but still being a part of that meta, I think they actually said meta awareness, and I just made it meta presence, which is, I kind of like it better actually, because there's a lot in that too. And so I guess what I'm realizing in the question is that play of where your presence starts to include other people's experiences in the world and maybe beyond, and being able to allow those layers to exist as they are, and to know which layer you're playing with.
I think, again, what comes up for me is the being in your body. So like we have the term "be where your feet are." It is a reminder for presence. Just be where your feet are, and think about that. Again, the feet are coming up. So the focus on when I'm in the presence of somebody else, focusing on my presence. We talk about it at Thrive. We talk about that interplay. Like when you're coaching somebody, there's this kind of dance, we call it. And there's a dance between the coach and client. And so I think that's no different it's almost like being present in the dance for
sure.
me.
And that goes beyond coaching
too.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, coaching, you're holding a slightly different space.
Definitely.
But it's that same concept of like,
absolutely.
Can I be in my own presence? Am I connected to my own presence? If I'm not even in my feet, then like, it doesn't really matter the other person. I'm totally outside of myself if that's the focus. But when I can be where my feet are in my own presence, connected to this moment. And now I think actually, Judy, you and I had a coaching session once where I landed a few times. Can I be who I am while you are being who you are? Mm-hmm. And can I honor both of those experiences, allowing you to be the fullness of you without getting rocked too much, and staying in the experience of me, and just playing with when I can't and playing with when I can. And that was a lot of presence without saying presence.
Agreed.
If you don't have any other questions, I I think this is like a great place to stop. I mean, we could keep talking about this. Like we said at the beginning, to me, I love concepts that are like so simple that there's so much depth to them. And so I just appreciate this time with you both. And I know that we'll have more conversations in iterations and nuanced versions of this. But before we wrap, in one word, Judy, lately or today, how are you living your true north?
I would say energized.
Jenell, do you feel like answering? I feel like you want to answer.
Well, I don't have an answer yet, but I was wondering if the question was going to bounce over to me. Okay, give me hold on. This is counterintuitive to what we've been talking about, but what just came up was living my true north in peace, like peace and acceptance.
And I will say, Eeyore is what came up. I will explain. I am embracing my inner Eeyore as maybe one of my superpowers, and I have fought that part of myself for a very long time, and shamed that I have a very depth well of deep emotions that are not always the joy emotions. In fact, most of the time they are not. And I can sit in that space a lot. And again, I've shamed myself a lot. So I'm finding my true north and my magic in my inner Eeyore. So that's my word today. So, Judy, if people wanted to get in touch with you and or Thrive, how could they do that?
You can check us out at thrivehdc.com and or email me directly, judy@thrivehdc.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So good.
So awesome.
I feel like this one was even more. I mean, all of them have been really good, but I don't know, maybe it's just where I'm at, but this one to me felt really like our best yet.
As Rachel said, this concludes our last pre-recorded workshop of 2020. Again, make sure that you are on our mailing list, following us on Instagram to get more information on promotions related to our live workshops that are coming up in 2021. We would love to have you join us. As always, this has been another episode of the True North Collective podcast. We are beyond delighted that you've joined us. We'll see you next time.